Hi everyone, welcome to the Jeff Bullis Show. Today I have with me Matthew Yahes. Now, not quite sure whether I pronounced that correctly, but quite often people say my name incorrectly too, but it's okay. So welcome to the show, Matthew. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here.
Thanks, Jeff. Excited to talk to you today.
So Matthew is the founder of Extend Your Team. And if you don't know what that is about at the moment, we'll get into that a little bit later. He's on a personal mission to help entrepreneurs who are completely buried and held back by day-to-day operations. Does that sound familiar? So, and he helps you focus on growth and taking action that matters. Extend Your Team connects the best remote workers in the world to US businesses. So, and in a world where we are trying to work remotely, we can't have a team in the office, this is more relevant than ever before. So, Matthew, how did you get into this entrepreneur gig?
So, actually, I think it started back in 2008. So, in 2008, in the recession, or the U.S. recession, or the global recession, I was working for a management consulting company. I was working for the Chicago 2016 Olympic bid, and it was really fun. I mean, this was like a cherry project because you didn't have to travel. So if you know any management consultants, Jeff, all they do is travel and just work their behind off.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I was working for a company, and truthfully, like, one of the partners just didn't like me for some reason, right? So I had nothing to do with performance. He just didn't like me. So when the opportunities, I mean, this is business, right?
Yeah.
And when the opportunity came to, to cut, right? Because it was the recession and everyone, everyone was cutting. Despite the fact that I had good reviews, I had great projects. He cut me. So actually, he wasn't even the partner I worked for. It was someone else who was just a little more senior. And my partner refused to fire me. And he said, "You want to do it? You do it." And so this guy did it. But at the time, I was working for the Olympic bid. That was my client. And I told my boss at the time, my client, and he said, "That's ridiculous. Why don't you just come work for me at the Olympic bid directly?" So first step is I got out of corporate America, right?
Mm-hmm.
By getting laid off. And it's, I think it's just a very common story. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll do something different. Right. So that started the journey. So I worked for the Olympic bid. Then we lost, right? Then ironically, the other company that had let me go hired me back at twice the rate. So it's a contractor.
Yeah.
So I was like, this was the first time I had ever really contracted. And so I was like, well, I don't have to actually do as much stuff because I'm not working for the company. I just have client work. That's really great. And I get more money. So maybe there's something, here. That really was the beginning of my journey, where I started to realize that maybe there is a different way. And by working for yourself, essentially, you can make more money. There's a roller coaster, but that's really where it started.
So what were you doing before that? You mentioned management consulting. So I suppose you had this vision of, getting into corporate America, going up the tree, climbing the ladder. Was that part of the dream? Was that?
I don't say the dream. I say it was the plan. I don't know if climbing the corporate ladder is really a dream of most people. I actually graduated from University of Michigan, which is a well-known business school in the United States. And then prior to that, I was doing technology consulting. So I was working for a technology consulting company. And
right.
I just thought that, interestingly enough, it's a great question, because I thought that smart people, you go work for consulting companies because it's very prestigious. You then, move up the ranks, become a partner, or you go to a client at a high level doing whatever you're doing. And I just thought that's kind of what smart people do. You go to the right schools. I think a little differently now. I think it is what smart people do, but a lot of really smart people choose their own path. And for me, what I realized was, in retrospect, I was always a square peg in a round hole working for someone else. Like it just, I never, look, I didn't want to say the right things. I didn't want to play the game. I didn't care. Clients loved me, but the internal politics was never my thing, and nor did I want to play it. And so it really wasn't the perfect fit.
So just a question that sort of gets to maybe right to the core of this. Was there a particular day or a moment of epiphany where everything sort of aligned? I know you mentioned that you went and worked back as a contractor rather than as an employee. Was there any particular epiphany or intersection of experience, expertise, and what you love doing? Any of that sort of, was there a day you went, oh, gee, this feels right?
So I think the day I realized I should become an entrepreneur is when I was talking to my uncle. He was a very successful guy. This is when I got laid off. And he said, I know it's tough, but you can, that you got laid off regardless of, the circumstances. You can love a company, but it can't love you back.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means, and if you think about it, it's really sage advice, right? Meaning it's not yours. You're just a cog. It doesn't matter who you are. Maybe you're a bigger cog or a little cog. It doesn't really matter. And I think that really clarified for me, like, all right, this isn't for you, right? Because I throw my all into something. So throwing my all for someone else's benefits just made me realize like it wasn't for me. Then coincidentally, so my client from the Chicago 2016 Olympics was, one of the top people in the restaurant industry. And he had left one of the well-known companies you would know. And what he said to me, he goes, hey, guys pitching me on an idea to start this restaurant concept. He and I had a great relationship, and I was doing some, advisory work for him on the side. So why don't you come see me in Chicago? Because I was in New York at the time. And we can, I'll tell you about it. Told me about it. I gave him my armchair advice, right? And at the end of it, he said, you want to start a restaurant company with me? Why don't you join us? It's me, you, and 2 other people, right? I'm like the super junior guy. Mm-hmm. I was like, he was formerly number 2 at like a very large company. And I'm like, all right, I think it was 34 at the time. I'm like, well, a guy like that asked me to start a restaurant company. I told him, like, what do I know about restaurants? He goes, you're smart, you'll figure it out. I just need you to get stuff done. And so I, put a notice to my client at the time that, hey, this is what I'm doing. And that was my first real company that I started, right? Where this was it. I mean, we've raised money, like the whole 9 yards. And it was 4 years. It was just, it wasn't even like real. It was crazy. It was crazy.
So how much money did you raise to fund this new venture?
I think at the end, by the time, this is also after I left, I think it was 40 million.
Right.
At the time, I think it was somewhere around there. It could have been 35. It was like 35 to 45, somewhere there. I don't recall because a lot of it was after I left.
So the name of this business is called Life Kitchen. So tell us a bit about the concept, because I read a little bit about it, and it'd be great to hear what the concept was behind it.
Yeah. So the concept was, it's like great tasting, good for you food. So fast casual, where you order at the counter, the food's brought to you, but a much higher end feel. Everything was under 600 calories. Nothing was fried. You didn't have to worry about what was in your food. Whatever you ate tasted amazing and happened to be good for you as well. So taste first, health second, but it was just really delicious food. And the idea was to, really roll this out across America and in a big way, hundreds and hundreds of locations.
So when you left, how many stores were there?
So after 4 years, I think I got it up to 14 stores, 6 states. And so that's from concept, right? This was, it was fairly quick, but to do something like that, you do burn a lot of money simply because it's just the infrastructure for this. There's a couple of different ways you could do it. The way that was chosen to do it required a lot of money. and plant the flag strategy in multiple places, which has positive and negative things about it. But it was tough, man. I mean, like, I wasn't home for 4 years, but along the way, I met just crazy people. I mean, like, just incredible stories. I mean, I got to play fetch with Steve Wynn's German Shepherd guard dog in his office. So Steve Wynn, if you don't know who he is a casino magnate.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So we were going to do business with him, and I was like in his villa. I mean, he wouldn't remember me, right? But this obviously was impactful for me because I never met someone like this. I mean, like, things like that. I met all really interesting people, a lot of famous chefs, got exposed to the food world. A really interesting time, and I think really taught me a lot about what to do and what not to do.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? The journey quite often is actually the fun part, really. That's, arriving is overrated. I've met people who sort of like exit businesses and they're going, what next? I'm bored. I'm ordering daiquiris on the beach, but after 6 months of that, it's getting a little bit boring. So what was the motivation to move on?
So we had, taken in some money, and it was, in my opinion, not the right money. It was just time for me to leave.
Okay.
So it was right time. I engineered my own exit. I landed softly, and that was that. But it was also a lesson of, the golden rule. He who has the gold makes all the rules.
Yeah.
So be careful who you get in bed with.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember meeting someone in Australia at one of the big consulting companies, and they did a presentation, and he was the founder of the business, and it ended up being valued at $1 billion, and he walked away with nothing because the people that bought in just took over, and guess what? They made the rules. So you got to be very careful, don't you, about who you actually partner up with, and when you're a bit younger, it's easy to be, I suppose, dazzled by the bright lights.
Yeah, I think you feel that, and I think it's also if it's your first time doing this, right? So it wasn't just me. So I was the really junior guy, but even the senior guys, for most of them, for the three other guys, one of them had experience entrepreneurship, but the others, I don't think they really understood bad money, right? Not in a way that you would understand it conceptually, but you don't understand it in a real tangible way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's like people, you think that these guys have some magic answers because they have money, but no, they just have a bigger pocketbook. That's it. Right. And just because they have a bigger pocketbook and are successful in a different business does not mean they're going to be successful with this concept, even if it's in the same industry. Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons I think we all learned.
Yeah. So you then moved on, and I think you started a company called Third Rock Commerce, which has a portfolio of e-commerce businesses. Was that your next step?
No, so I played around in Silicon Valley for a hot second. I joined a food concept. I joined actually an outsourced virtual assistant business, and it has interim COO level type roles. And what I realized is, as my wife says, you're unemployable. You can't work for anyone else. So she's like, at this point in your life, she goes, you're unemployable. So, so I said, all right, but it was for a hot second. I realized that sometimes expertise is undervalued, and sometimes people just don't want to face the reality of where they are. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy that comes in, which is why I was hired in Life Kitchen, to get stuff done like a freight train. I don't care. This is where we're going. This is where we're going. Bulldoze. Just get it done. Right. That's the kind of guy I am. That's why you would hire me. You're not hiring me to be now I could be the touchy-feely, lovey guy, but I'm the guy that if stuff's going wrong, you want me there to help you figure it out. And so, it was just a real lesson, when you have younger entrepreneurs who are both successful in their own right, but things aren't going right. Here I am coming in saying, hey, by the way, your house is on fire, your pants are on fire, and so are your feet. I don't care how great you think you are. It just was a lesson of, again, square peg, round hole. Like, I could do it, but people have to be ready to listen.
Mm.
So my wife said, I sell stuff online for fun. She was like, well, why don't you, I was designing athletic gear and importing it from China and selling on eBay for fun. I had a small little business. I mean, it was more of a hobby than anything. So why don't you go do something in the internet, do something in e-commerce, buy a business? I go, what the heck can you buy on the internet? Like, this is, from now it's a lot more common, but back then it was not. So like, what am I buying? Right? Like, what are these businesses? I know Google, Facebook. What else? Well, it turns out the internet is Google, Facebook, but it's also millions of businesses you never heard of that make millions of dollars. And I mean, the internet's massive. It sounds like no kidding, but until you understand what the different models are, you don't really appreciate it. And you meet these entrepreneurs who never work for anybody else, have these quote unquote small businesses, but are pulling in 7-figure net incomes, right, from their small business. And there are a lot of guys and gals like this. There's just a lot. And so I jumped in and I bought a portfolio of 3 sites at the time. Now it's 4. And it was, did about, was at the time, was like 3 million a year in revenue. And I just jumped in both feet, not knowing very much about it.
Okay. So where are we up to today? Like, if you're willing to share it?
Sure. So pre-COVID, it was 5 million. And it was real hard for it. 5 million didn't have to be as hard as it did, but I guess I had to pay my tuition and learn my lessons. Mm-hmm. Though what happened in COVID, and this is, another thing about being an entrepreneur, it's, hey, 3 to 5 million. That's awesome, right? I think that's pretty good, right? Did it on my own. Well, except I'm in the wedding business for most of it. How well do you think that went last year or even now? I mean, it went, I went down at one point, it was down 95%. Now it's settled in around 75% down.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's brutal, but there's nothing I can do. Like, I mean, it's not like, you would, someone say, well, you can pivot your products and this. I'm like, yes, but realistically, brand positioning was a well-known brand in the industry. I could pivot, or I could save the ship so it just kind of hangs out until weddings come back because of COVID, which they will, and just kind of reinvest and like work on the business and have that kind of do its thing. But, talk about preparation and a roller coaster, right? What do you do when your industry disappears?
And who can plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess you could, you diversify. So the way you plan in e-commerce land is you diversify, have multiple sites. So the example is I have sites that are in gift baskets, right? So those sites, I have 2 of those sites did very well, but the portfolio was over-indexed in wedding. It was a monster business. So that, so that goes down, yes, I still have a business and yes, it got saved, but all of a sudden it went, I can't make up that income, right? So it's just, okay, how do you make sure you can make some money, not lose money, and, live to fight another day?
Absolutely. Yeah. So diversification is important. But I suppose the challenge with diversification is when you say lack of focus if you're not careful.
Sure. So I think that is, you can have a lack of focus, but I guess it all depends. What's the business you're in? Am I in the business of weddings? Am I in the business of owning e-commerce portfolios? Like, what's my business?
Yep.
Right. So I bought into the business. I purchased the business because I wanted to have a portfolio. And the truth is, I'll be honest, like I went from here's my vision to sucked into day-to-day operations. And my vision became smaller and smaller to, I'm just going to grow a wedding business, which was never the idea when I first did it. Right. So if you're not careful, so focus can be something larger, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be like the best wedding site, but in my case, I came in with this big vision and then I was like, okay, well, now I'm just going to go try to grow this wedding business. And I lost sight of the fact that I never got in it to be in wedding business.
Yeah. So you really were there to be an entrepreneur and putting systems in place and procedures and resources and the people to run it without you. That's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, that's why I got into it. Instead I bought myself a job.
Yeah.
Which was terrible. I mean, like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that happens all the time. People buy franchises because they're just basically buying a job.
Yeah.
And and at the end of the day, they have very little control. They're just another employee for a big corporation again. So it sounds like there was maybe an aha moment in there regarding this for extend your team business, which is your main focus today. So so extend your team? How did that start? What was the inspiration for that?
Actually, so, we talked first earlier about the journey, right? So when I think about it's really just a culmination of my journey. So for 3.5 years in the e-commerce business, I was working like a dog, and I had experimented with people overseas, right? And I just, it was always what everyone does, at least in the internet business that I know. They go for low level talent. I'm going to go get someone for $5 an hour. It's going to be a virtual assistant. They're going to, solve my life and do whatever for me. Yes, you can do that. But the truth is, at $5 an hour, even in the Philippines, that's entry level. And what happens with entry level people is there's a lot of management time. It's just how it is, right? So when I was previous to Third Rock Commerce, I had worked for a company called Zirtual for a hot second. This is before they were sold. What happened was that company, they were 450 people. I thought it was the greatest idea ever. They were US based, outsourced executive assistants. I thought this would be I thought it was a phenomenal business. Unfortunately, the financials were a little wonky the way they ran the business. So yeah, you want to go out. If you ever want to go out of business quickly in a people business, post pay, don't prepay. Have your clients post pay instead of prepay, meaning collect the money at the end of the month versus the first of the month.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a staffing business, that just means the faster you grow, the more money you need in order to make payroll. It's just you can't get it. You have to be so profitable in order to get ahead of it. And on top of it, if you're doing an ACH, right, which is pulled directly from people's bank accounts, you don't get the money for 10. You bill them on whatever day. You don't get the money for up to 2 weeks. So because it's cash out of the bank account, it's different. It's not a credit card. So now you have 6 weeks to cover of cash you have to cover while you're growing. So needless to say, they went out of business, or they were sold. So they still exist. So I love this idea, and so I said, all right, well, my wife said to me, why don't you get someone who is really good out of the Philippines to run your business? I go, honey, I don't know anyone that's done this, right? It's just, I know people really successful. They never outsourced to the Philippines at that level. She looks at me, I don't know if you're married. She says, well, I think it's a country of 100 million people. I think there's one person who could probably help you. Like the biggest, you idiot voice. So she's a very senior executive, and so she's actually really good at hiring. So she's looking at me like I'm just an idiot. So I spent like 2 months, 100 interviews. God knows how many resumes, probably 500 I reviewed, and whittled it down, and then hired this woman Angelica. She was chief of staff for a 100-person company. Came in to help me with my 6-person company because she hated her boss, right? She's people leave for people. That's, people leave for money, but people leave for people. And so what happened was, she came in to my e-commerce business where I was working 14-hour days. And this is no exaggeration. I really was. She, within a week, got it 80% right. Within 6 weeks, I was working like 3 hours a day. And then now I work, even now, the business still does like $2 million. So it shrank dramatically, the e-commerce business. But, she runs that entire business for me. I talk to her about it. That's about it. Right? That's the extent of my involvement. So, 2 hours a week. So during COVID, when we had this, now a lot of free time, I said to her, hey, wait a second. And people thought I was crazy when I did it, but they loved it. They saw the results and were amazed. I said, why don't we start an agency? Find people like you. Can we find people like you? Yes. And that was the concept. Just get better people. That's it. Do not do cheap, get better people. People can help you with your business.
So what's your target market? Would be companies that are maybe in excess of starting into the seven figure, like six figures, $1 million plus, that need to put in a senior person to run it. Is that their target market? Is it?
It's real. So it really, you have to have real revenue, right? Because the team members cost anywhere from like 16 to 18, 16 to 20 US dollars, right? So it's still $35 to $45,000, right?
Mhm.
And that's like, so you still have to be able to support something like that. So it's an entrepreneur who's overworked. Their net income is significant enough that they need to hire an employee like this to help them grow. So someone who's going to take off all the tactical tasks off your plate so you can focus on growing your business. And it could be so we have people with 4 people, right? We have clients with 4 people. It could be in different disciplines, right? But the common thread is I need the best person who does X. Our bread and butter is like a chief of staff level. We're like a project manager on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
That's our bread and butter. But we help people with graphic designers, Facebook ads, and even general assistants. But the common thread is no junior people.
Mm-hmm.
It's people anywhere from I've been a general virtual assistant for 10 years through I ran a 2,000 person company, 2,000 person division, and and they cost $27 an hour to a client. Like it's the range is massive, but on average, people have 15 years experience.
That's really fascinating. So when I read your line, why you should not hire a VA, hire your next business leader instead, I went, okay, this is interesting. So, because quite often the challenge is who do you hire, isn't it? So like, do I need someone who's going to be an editor? Do I need a writer? Do I need someone to do research? And this is going through my mind at the moment because we've got a project on this year. We want to create a new product. I know the concept. So that's maybe a project for a new product. And I do have a VA. She does just some basic work for me. Right. So I suppose the big question for a lot of entrepreneurs is, who do I hire? And you're saying maybe just hire someone who can run the business better than you.
That's my opinion, right? So it's somewhat. So I wake up in the morning. I have 2 businesses at this point, 70 people working for me, right? Mm-hmm. I wake up. There's no way I can know what's going on. First of all, I'd be stressful. I'd be working all this time. I get a report every single morning in Slack. Here's what's going on in your e-commerce business by discipline. Here's what you need to know. Here's what I need to know about the remote worker business, the VAs. And here's what I need from you. So what has that done for me? She's overseeing just the glue that binds the business together. What that does for me is I say, okay, I need to do these 3 things to not roadblock the team. Now I go about my day, and my day can be whatever I want. Well, if I want to work on marketing, I want to grow the business, I have other meetings. Heck, I want to go snowboarding, right? I'm free now. And by the way, there's someone getting paid to focus on making sure nothing gets dropped. That's their job. And it's a different approach because like you have a VA, you probably, she does low level tasks for you. Sure, it's, she's $5-6 an hour out of the Philippines or something similar, right? Mm-hmm. Wherever, it depends where it is, right? And that's great, but you're not, in my opinion, I think this is where, and this is, I know from my own experience because I did that, right? But when I started going up the value chain, I was able to get talent that would be 3x in the United States and who were just great at their jobs, and my business improved as a result of it. My e-commerce business was running phenomenally before COVID. There's nothing anyone could do about that, right? Weddings were illegal. But my other business, right? My VA business, I can never have this without having someone quarterback this whole thing for me. Is she an expert in any one discipline? No, she's not. She's an athlete. And I personally think for an entrepreneur, having athletes in different positions, if you're a graphic designer, you want a great graphic designer. But if you want someone to offload tasks you just be able to like catch whatever you throw at them, get an athlete.
Absolutely. So is Angelica's across all businesses, or is it just?
Yeah. So I'm firing her from, I use this term firing because I think it's a great, it's a great, I actually think it's a great term. Like I tell people you need to fire yourself. I fire myself from my job every 2 to 3 months. Like whatever I'm doing, I got to give it to someone else every 2 to 3 months. So I'm firing her off of the e-commerce business. We're going to hire someone. She's looking for someone to do that. And I'm going to have her solely focused on the VA business. Because I think it's becoming big enough where it's just too much. Like realistically, it's too much. The e-com business is not getting the attention it needs. So I need someone there. Right?
Okay. So how do you, like, if you are going to help a company such as myself or anyone else, how do you go about that? What's that process look like?
I think the first thing is, what are you doing that you shouldn't be? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the real question. I think as entrepreneurs, I do this all the time, or my wife tells me very gently, why are you doing this? You have a team, go give it to them. I do stuff I like, right? Like, I mean, I just, if I enjoy something, I get sucked into it. Mm. But it's not necessarily always great. But so you sit there and look at your day and say, divide it into two things, strategic and tactical. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so strategic is Jeff level tasks that require Jeff's experience, knowledge, and training. Mm-hmm. That's strategic. Tactical is everything else. And if you go through your day, and that includes onboarding clients, following up with clients, not just scheduling calls and emails, right? Mm-hmm. Overseeing other contractors, right? That's not strategic. That's tactical. If you need, you're launching a product and you need to get the design specs to the designer, short of you writing out what you want, putting it in a format that the designer needs and giving it to the designer, working with the designer to get to get everything going, that's tactical. It may have a strategic goal, but it's still tactical. Yeah. And so once you do that, you now have a job description. And so the mistake that people make for outsourcing is they never create job descriptions, right? They just say, oh, I want someone to do it all. Well, a pink sparkly unicorn, who can fly at midnight costs 400,000 US. So go pay that money. Everyone else, you need to make job descriptions for. And then you just go from there. And, we do a real search. We do a bespoke search.
That's interesting. So job description, in other words, what do I really want them to do? In other words, you've got to reflect a little bit on what you are doing and going, okay, and I structure my day a little bit around what you just mentioned, strategic and tactical. What I try and do is, mornings for me, it's very much strategic, and giving myself the mission to do some research, to do some reading, and the thing I do love doing, which is writing. And one of the major reasons I write is to learn. And that way, then I can keep on top of the beat of the street of an industry, whether it's the podcasting industry, whether it's the remote work industry. So I actually write a blog post every week about an area within my industry, so I can learn. And that's part of what I do. Now, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it works for me. And I also, what it gives me such energy and inspiration because I'm learning. And if I'm not learning, I feel like I'm just standing still, just doing the day-to-day. And I think even a lot of corporate professionals don't give themselves permission to learn. They get so stuck in the doing, whether it's doing management or whatever. And I think quite often they become stale and also lose inspiration because they're just doing the same old. And for me, it's really important to keep an eye on what's trending in my industry or an industry that's part of what I do. But then the afternoon is, okay, I've got to get some emails done. I've got to have a meeting, that sort of thing. So I try and keep the mornings pretty clear. They're not stressful. I have some fun, like have a chat to you. But I'm learning. Like Matthew, you're educating me. That's what I love too.
That's strategic.
That is very strategic. And it's also relationship building. Okay. You never know. We might end up doing something down the track. We might have a beer together in Tahoe one day, Lake Tahoe. But the reality is that it is very strategic on a few levels. So, but I did love your thing about write a job description for the person. Which is 101, I know, but a lot of people don't.
No one does. No, like, so we do this for like, no. I don't know one person, I can't say that. I don't know, I can count on one hand, how many people I know that have written a job description for a virtual assistant. I don't know. I mean, and it's especially even more important when you need someone to help you do real tasks. If I want them to do my email, okay, you can say I don't need a job description for that. But but when you start going up the ladder and like they need to help you like do actual work, onboard clients, do client management. And believe me, look, my team does all my client management. My clients, of course, I'll talk to them, but after we do a sale, unless you need my advice, I'm the worst person to talk to, right? Because I'm just going to hold up the process. And so you can get these high-level thinkers, right? And if you're going to hire a high-level thinker, like someone who's just like you or I, who happens to live in the Philippines, you need to treat it like a real job. And it's crazy because people just don't do it. I mean, we do it for clients, but everyone, when I tell them you got to write a job description, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. It's just the other thing is to think about, like, you writing a blog post for you is very strategic. For me, let's say my e-commerce business, that's tactical, right? So everybody's what's strategic for you may be tactical for me, vice versa.
Yeah, it depends on your business. Mine is a digital niche publishing company, essentially, and training company in education area. For entrepreneurs and for growing your business in a digital world, that sort of thing. So, it varies on the business. I do love the fact about so write a job description. Okay, so write a job description. That's the first step. What happens after that in terms of how you look after clients?
Yeah. So for us, what we do is we do a real search, right? So the dirty secret about finding virtual assistants is it's not you can't just, there's not like a plethora of amazing candidates everywhere. You have to do real searches for them, right? Whether you do it yourself or we do it, doesn't really matter. You actually need to, interview a lot, learn, especially if you haven't hired from a different culture, right? Understand what makes a good person for you to work with from someone else. Obviously we do that for you, but so the next step is we go do real job postings, a lot of interviews. We do LinkedIn outreach in the Philippines, like specifically targeting professionals, networking, a lot of relationship stuff, right? Then they'll go through the interview process. It's 2 to 3 interviews before they see a client. And then we pass a client one person. And if they like them, great. If not, we then can adjust the filter. We typically don't do 2 to 3 candidates at a time, simply because if we were finding a certain type of candidate for you and you didn't like that candidate, we gave you 3 of them, you're just going to get frustrated. So it's better to hit one. Typically speaking, we hit it on the first time, but certainly on the second.
Okay. So keep going. Sorry.
But the most important thing, doesn't matter if you're doing this on your own when you're outsourcing, is you need to write down, not have to write, but you need to have SOPs, standard operating procedures. Thankfully, in modern times, you can just do a screen recording, and it can just be a 60-second video instead of a document that takes you 3 weeks to write, which is what I used to do for a living. Mm-hmm. But that also, so now you've hired someone, you have to let them know what they need to do. And you need to set expectations. So just, do a lot of, like, everyone gets tripped up on this, like it's going to be a big effort. Just record a lot of videos of all the tasks that you want them to do. Record it once, 60 seconds, 120 seconds, and give it to them. Now they have something to measure themselves against. When you say, I want, even something as simple, I want you to do my email. Well, what does that mean for Jeff? Right? For Jeff, it means A, B, C, D, and E, categorizing. Maybe you have some system. I don't know. Right? Mm-hmm. And now here you go. Here's you spent 2 minutes just talking, not polished. And now you have your procedure for email, and just go through all the tasks. And eventually you have a library. And if that person ever leaves or you grow and you bring on someone new, guess what? They have it all done. There's no more training needed. Say, go look at the video, and that's it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I've had this discussion, especially about virtual companies or remote work, because you can't walk across the corridor, pop into the office and going, how do we do this? Today, it needs someone like a video or a document. And it's interesting that you mentioned using video instead of writing a document. For me, I would like to write a document, but the video is a much more efficient way to do it. What sort of tool do you use to do the video in? Is it Zoom, Loom? What do you use?
Loom. So it's called Loom. Yeah, so LOOM.com. It's great. I mean, I've been using them for years. It's what I did in my e-commerce business. People were asking me questions, and then so when Loom came out, I stopped answering any message. I would send them a video answer, and then within a short period of time of really a few months, all the questions, I mean, 90% of the questions stopped. And then what I did was I took videos and I augmented it with text to get even more specific.
Yeah. That is fascinating in terms of, and the term you tossed around a lot is asynchronous versus synchronous communication. What you've described is asynchronous communication. In other words, record it once, you can share it many times, and it can be used for the next year or two, depending on when it's relevant. So you're actually documenting via video.
Yes.
Like GitLab, for example, has 8,500 words documented. Now, they're a big company, 1,400 people. They actually have someone who looks after all this for them. In fact, it's a team. But it's fascinating to hear this repeated, especially in the last few weeks, as I've dived a little bit more into remote work and what's required to do it well. The tools, Loom, you can use a bunch of other tools, I'm sure, but I have come across that like yesterday. I have heard of it before. But you are scaling you because you are documenting by recording it once, and then that can be shared hundreds of times.
It really is life-changing. Honestly, it's life-changing. Especially if you're hiring lower level employees, like more junior employees, or like in the Philippines, you have no choice but to do this, right? You have to, because it also matches expectation, because now you can say, look at the video, and if they do something different than the video, you're like, you have a video. They can watch that video 100 times.
That's right.
And never ask you a question. Let's say every single time they forget how to do the task, they can watch the video. They never need to ask you, right? Yep. It's a beautiful thing. And it's not, you still talk to people on Skype or Zoom and have calls, like personal calls, but it's never about stuff that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. It's, and I think too, if you want to turn it to text, it's quite easy. You just send it off to rev.com and they'll turn it into text for you. So you've got two different types of media. Some people like video, some people like to read. So
now it transcribes it. Actually, they just came with a feature of Loom where it'll transcribe the video.
They'll transcribe it for you.
Yeah. So there are all these automated tools. Like I use things like to record sales calls. I use a tool to record the sales call. So I don't have to take any notes now, right? I go through a script that my team gave me, but I don't have to take notes. And then after the call, my team writes up the job description based on that, sends it to the client. And that's it. That's the extent of my involvement. And then, there's a whole process. So all these tools where 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you had to do a lot of this manually. It was painful. Oh, yeah. And now it's so much easier. And, it's just so much easier to make remote work, and to scale yourself.
Yeah. I had a bit of an interesting experience recently when I ran a face-to-face meeting, which are becoming rarer, especially in digital businesses and global. Yeah. So I drove over the bridge, parked the car, walked to the office, sat down with them, and we chatted for an hour. It was a lovely conversation. It sort of felt weird. I don't know why, but it did.
Oh, we're all, locked in.
I'm going, hang on, this is what I used to do all the time. I was a sales guy. I used to go in and run meeting after meeting, face-to-face, drive around in the car park, catch a train, bus, fly, whatever, however you need to get to a meeting. I walked away from the meeting and said, we didn't record it. I'm going, so I didn't take any notes either. I'm going...
Yeah.
And I'm going, this feels weird. it was like, to use a religious term, come to Jesus moment in terms of the new digital world, virtual world, remote work world, in that I hadn't captured the moment. I hadn't captured the chat. Guess what we're doing here? This is recorded. I can dive into the detail later. I can get the transcript done. I can share that. We can turn a blog post. We turn to video as well as audio. I've got 3 different types of media. Guess what? This moment in time for an hour has been recorded. And it was an incredible, strange, weird feeling of how I used to work versus...
Yeah, we all did, not just you. I mean, take notes.
You take notes, that's right.
Take notes. And so it's crazy how it's, I mean, look, for me, the workflow, right? I don't take notes, right? In order for me, when my team is interviewing candidates, I at first was interviewing them. I stopped that and I said, oh, why don't I just, I'll look, I'll just look at the recording, record your meetings. I want to watch them so I can watch what they did. And I said, oh, okay, I like them or I don't, or maybe there's some things I want to find out. Then I can, more efficient use of my time, then I can schedule a call, right? Because I can listen to the interview while I'm doing something else. And I know I'm going to get out of it. And also I can repurpose that content, give it to a client. By the way, here was their interview. Kind of let us know what you think. Do you want to talk to them? So all of a sudden, we've gotten so much more efficient, right? The filtering is just phenomenal, and all these workflows that we never had possible, and also just recording just makes everything possible. Right. Transcribing and, indexing. So now you can even index meetings now. So like they'll index, you give this to a transcription service. I can search the transcript for a specific time we were talking about something, then watch the video and create a clip out of it if I wanted to. Yep. Like it's mind blowing.
Yep. The big challenge for a lot of us, especially those who may be a little older, well, not for all of us, is that the challenge quite often isn't learning, it's unlearning. You've had decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of doing things a certain way. Yeah. And you get trapped in that way. Look, and I'll give a simple example. One is, how do I do something? Right, for me, it used to be research, bring it up in text, get a document, read it through. This happened quite a few years ago. And I went, okay, I just need to YouTube it. Search on YouTube, how to play a guitar, whatever. Yeah, my son, who's slightly dyslexic, that's his modus operandi. For everything he wants to learn, it's YouTube. And guess what? For me, it is now too. So how do I, fix my computer, or how do I get this software to work, or I'm going, how do I plug this appliance in? You're like, okay, so it's, and guess what? There will be a YouTube video on it. You can almost guarantee it. Like how to talk to a Martian. I'm sure there's one for that. So it's fascinating. But unlearning is actually as important as learning, and because it's outside our boxes or box of our paradigm of how we've done things for decades quite often.
100%. Listen, so I started using Skype very heavily for business when I bought my e-commerce company, right? It was weird for me, to just it was weird even for me to just constantly talk to people on Skype, right? My employees at the time were like, I don't really want to do it. I'm like, no, we have to see each other face to face. Sorry. We need to develop this relationship. But it was weird for me too. Or FaceTime. Do you remember when a video call was like the weirdest thing to your friends? Like, I don't want to talk, see you. Now you FaceTime or video call everywhere. It's just, it just takes time. This is, in my opinion, companies will no longer, I can't say no company. Many companies will be built remote first, simply because of, your dollars go further. If you think about it as an entrepreneur, right, your capital is yours. Right? If you're not raising money, your capital is yours. Even if you are raising money, well, why not get the best talent that you can find in the world? Why would you restrict yourself to a geographic area anymore? Whether that's your country or another country, whatever works for you.
I totally agree with you, because if you design it from the ground up for remote work, it then becomes much more scalable.
Yeah.
And also your processes that you use and the way you, such as asynchronous communication, record how to do it on video once and then it's done. And, you know, it's, so processes and documentation become really, really important, and training people now becomes scalable, and you've got the world. You don't have to worry about just dealing with, you know, your local city or your local state. And guess what? You know, 40-50% of companies are knowledge industries. Right? But I think 42% of people can do remote work. There's a number I've heard tossed around a lot. The rest do have to show up, like health and care workers, you know, restaurant workers.
What was 20%?
Yeah.
Think about the difference it's going to mean. If it's 20% of workers never go back, think of what's going to change.
Yeah. And it's fascinating me to learn about, you know, your insights as well, and what I've heard from other, you know, sharp, smart, you know, experienced entrepreneurs is the different things that are raising their, you know, head that we didn't have discussions about 2 years ago. You know, asynchronous communication, yes, it was around. A lot of people weren't using it, but now it's becoming much more part of the, you know, being a digital entrepreneur. How do I scale this business? How do I scale me?
Right. And there's so many tools now, you know, to help you manage these processes. Right. I mean, I use one, we use different process tools for different things. We have one that we use called Process Street. It's great. It's literally for everything that's a repeatable process that you're not doing like every single day, but you have a process that, let's say, client onboarding or sales, where, hey, sale, you know, that you got a sale kicks off, you can kick off a process now where you make sure it's done the exact same way every single time, and people who are at different stages of the process get notified when it's their turn, right? So nothing ever gets dropped. You know, before you would use a checklist, right? You can still use checklists, but these tools are just evolving at such a rapid pace. And I think, in my opinion, is shrinking the divide between entrepreneurs, let's say at my level, right, and large companies, or solopreneurs, right? Many times a solopreneur now could just, you know, it gets multipliers of their efforts because of the tools available that maybe at large companies, they have, you know, corporate procedures and mandates that they can't use the same tools. So in some ways, like, you may be at an advantage.
I definitely agree. And my partner, she works in a law firm, for example, and they are trapped a lot in old tools, legacy system tools, and also tradition, which is hundreds of years old. And quite often new tools aren't adopted very quickly. There's a startup in, you know, law firms, for example, that, you know, work in, you know, that are basically going, we can do this a better way. We can do it faster. We can scale it, but still have the integrity as well. What was the name of the tool you mentioned? Was it Process Tree?
Process Tree, PROCESS .st, or Process Space Street. Look for that. It's great. We use it. It's a little pricey, it's like 10 or 15 bucks per user, but it pays off because mistakes don't happen. So it's, you know, the other one I like is Monday. Like Mondays, I'm a big Monday fan. We use that, which is a task management tool.
Okay. So what does Monday do?
So it's a task manager. Ever hear of Asana? It's like Asana.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Same kind of thing.
Okay. So, obviously, having systems that allow you to scale yourself, you know, asynchronous communication, documenting what you do, and this, yeah, I agree with the tools we have today versus 10 years ago. You know, are just amazing. Like, about a year ago, my team was struggling, you know, to get me to adopt. We put on board Trello, the collaboration tool. Put Trello on and went to the guys. Look, I'm going to do it. Just I'm unlearning. Just give me a little time. But it seriously changed my life. Like, it's just so good.
Well, you get to see what, like, it's just in an instant you can see what's going on and where.
Yep.
Right, and now it's getting like these tools get crazy. Like, so I have like a set of dashboards that are created now, so I can now truly look at the health of a certain area of my business against what I want the metrics to be. In my world, it's, time to hire, right? The recruiting time that it takes needs to be as short as possible, right? The shorter the time, the quicker the cash. So I had the team create a dashboard in Monday that looks at how long it's taking for us to hire on average and how long it takes to get the client onboarded. And this way there's no hiding now, right? And it's automatically, there's no manual. It's automatically pulling in data from wherever the hell it pulls in from. And it's just amazing. Right?
Is that a custom tool, or is that an off-the-shelf tool?
No, it's in Monday. So in Monday, you could create these data dashboards that are based off of other parts of Monday.
Yep.
It's amazing. I mean, if you, or you can use a tool like Zapier. Right? You know what Zapier is?
Yeah,
Zapier's think about that. Like that tool has just changed the way work is done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and a lot of traditional industries just a lot of them have built custom tools that just aren't even close to what these tools can do.
At the end of the day, right? Are you going to become an expert software developer, or are you going to just rely on people who do this for a living?
Yep.
That's really that's the attitude, my attitude. Like, I'd rather just go rely on the people. I don't have to maintain it. I don't have to deal with it. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I think you've summed it up quite nicely in terms of you use systems and processes and platforms to help you find people, then communicate, and you're helping businesses become more efficient, which is pretty awesome. What's a couple of sort of like takeaways that you'd like to leave for our audience, Matthew?
Yeah, I would say that that building out processes to make your business scalable does not have to be difficult. Don't be scared. Don't get overwhelmed. There are just hacks to do it, and do it quickly and efficiently. So just don't be scared. And then when you're ready to hire someone, it doesn't matter the role. Spend 15 minutes, because it's literally all you have to do, and write a job description. And those two things alone, SOPs and writing a job description, you'll be able to scale your business in a much more efficient, much easier manner.
Thank you. I think that's very wise words, and comes from a lot of experience and pain, because you were buried in the weeds.
A lot of arrows over here, a dagger on my neck,
Yeah, well, you spent, 3 years, 14 hours a day lost in the weeds, and you went, it must be a better way, and you've come up with a better way, which is awesome.
Yeah. I'm embarrassed it took me that long, but as my wife says, I'm a slow learner.
Well, I'm in the same club, mate, so don't worry about it, okay? So thank you very much for your time, Matthew. And before we leave, how can people find Matthew?
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn. So my name's Matthew, and the last name's Yahes, Yahes. And just connect with me. Say hello. You have questions, just shoot me a message. I'm always happy to help people no matter where you are on the journey. You want to talk just entrepreneurship, love to talk to you.
Thank you, Matthew. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you from Lake Tahoe, from me here in Sydney. And I never take this for granted that we can talk in high definition from on the other side of the world, and learn a lot, have a chat, talk shit, and have some fun. So, yeah.
100%. It's been great, Jeff. Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you.